Name I've made up for some plants which have green, shiny, blade-like leaves, and which in many parts of tropical Africa have profound significance as boundary plants, markers, shrines, at graves, at royal enclosures, and so on. Okay, plants that I'm talking about are members of this group. That's a Dracaena plant, and you know it's very popular in students' bedrooms because it doesn't die. And that's why I believe it shows up in so many places. When you mark a grave with a Dracaena, it stays marked, okay? And here you see an example of a Dracaena in an African country marking the boundary of a farm. Okay, when I say Africa, please allow me to a little latitude. It's just that the plant turns up in so many tropical countries. Right? This slide produced by Sheridan in 2008 is the result of a literature survey. He's been working out in Tanzania, and he said, whenever we go on a walk and come across some Dracaena planted, somebody would say, oh, there was a grave here, or there used to be a dwelling here. And then he gradually recognized through his reading that Dracaena was popping up all over the place with similar meanings, marking boundaries between the now and the beyond, marking boundaries between one kingdom's land and another, one person's farm and another, and in Tanzania, one author pointed out that the government put down certain types of markers, metal stakes to mark where your land was, but you come along and you put down Dracaena, and that helps you to know, helps your neighbors know where it really is. You know? Then, at the end of his paper, he pointed out that there was something going on here. That there's one paper suggesting that there was something going on across in the Caribbean, in the island of Trinidad, where it seemed somebody was reporting Dracaena as a boundary marker. I read that paper. I'd just been visiting some cemeteries, and I called him up and said, hang on, do you think that's Dracaena? I have another idea. And we started to talk and work together a little bit. Next slide here shows you something else. It's just a similar study that he did showing where Dracaena is on graves and shrines in Africa, whereas the one up here concentrates on where it appears, marking fences and boundaries. And these references are sometimes quite tangential. They might be in a journal that's talking about something agricultural. Sometimes it's a journal talking about something political. But we've now got over 100 references to what's going on. Now, Dracaena that I showed you before is not really very sword-like looking. It's a bit limp. But there are several Dracaena species. And there's this second one here, where the leaves look seriously sword-like. Out in East Africa, this one is the one more likely to be found at a king's grave. And speaking to a healer, what she said is this: the floppy one is usually around the gardens. This one, the spirits have to tell you to plant it. You never cut it down without performing a ritual. You have to mix up medicines, liquids, which contain, among other plants, the floppy Dracaenas. Okay? This one is called the elephant king. And analogous situations occur in all the way down to Zimbabwe, across in Rwanda, and over in West Africa. Here is a shrine of the king who resisted the British in Uganda, and all around the shrine too is the dagger-like version of the Dracaena. Here is a shrine tree in Uganda, and the Dracaena is next door, marking the site. Here's the coronation area in Uganda, where my wife comes from, and the whole area is surrounded by this dagger-like plant. As I said, when you get into West Africa, you also find some interesting scenarios like this. Here in Cameroon, the plant is called peace plant, and here one of the Dracaenas is being carried by people who are approaching the faun or king. Oof. Sorry, this is jumpy for me. Okay.
It's jumpy for me.
Right. Here is people approaching the king carrying peace plant, and there are many cultures across the grasslands of Tanzania which refer to this in pidgin as peace plant, but have their own words for it. It is used in blessing the arrival of twins. It's used as a boundary marker. It defends your property against attack by evil influences and against attack by lightning. Here's the palace of the fauns, rulers of a kingdom in Cameroon. And this picture taken in 1960 shows a lightning averter at the palace on which Dracaena has been planted. This Dracaena as a defense against lightning was in Tanzania, pops up again here in Cameroon, and interestingly enough, I get ahead of myself a little, it pops up again here and there in the Caribbean. Here in Uganda, in Nigeria, the Dracaena turns up at shrines. This is a big old one. Here's the shrine in Oyo, in Nigeria, of Shango, the god of lightning, the Orisha of lightning, and the Dracaenas are around the shrine. In this parade, the masquerade is carrying one of the sword-like Dracaenas. It's Dracaena arborea, and it's called here the sword of Fulangai. And this is a ceremony performed not often, but at the coronation of one of the fauns in Cameroon. They carry the cutlass, metal cutlass in one hand, and the sword of Fulangai in the other hand. And in this culture also you have the two uses of the two different morphotypes of Dracaena. Okay. That's the last masquerade in the parade, coming along with his sword of Fulangai. So, we jump across. We have a look here in Cameroon. This is a cemetery full of Dracaena. And we were asking, has this tradition crossed the Caribbean, and how widespread it is? So, the next few pictures show instances in the Caribbean where we find Dracaena sometimes, but much more often a red plant, a related plant, Cordyline fructicosa. Now, here in Suriname, we have an interesting situation where Cordyline fructicosa is found on the graves of all sorts of people, including some maroon people. But The tradition in Suriname is that it was brought in by the Javanese Surinamese. It is indeed a plant from Malaysia all across the Pacific to Hawaii, where it has surprisingly the same types of ritual significance. It's a boundary plant, it keeps spirits off, and it's very well known in the anthropological material in the Pacific. And Tinder Van Andel pointed out that in Suriname, the people there believe it to have come into African hands and other people's hands through the Javanese. However, in the British-speaking Caribbean, it seems to have arrived on the same ship that breadfruit arrived on Captain Bligh's second voyage from the Pacific. It was introduced into the newly formed botanical gardens in Jamaica and St. Vincent, some of the world's first botanical gardens, and then seems to have spread out from there over the next couple of centuries into the use of the Afro-Caribbean communities. Here in the island of St. Lucia, we find just Cordyline, all here. Next. Here in the island of Trinidad and Tobago, it's Cordylines again. And I mentioned that this country, it's commonly found around boundaries, and it's known mostly as boundary plant. Okay? Next one. Here in Trinidad, it's being planted to mark the shrine of the Orisha Shango, which is the deity of lightning, which made it across the Atlantic, and another religion called Jango turns up in Brazil. There in Brazil, Dracaena is used in marking and in ritual, as well as Cordyline, which is called the red Dracaena. Actually, the Yoruba name in ritual for the plant is perigum, and you find that word in Yoruba land, in Nigeria, you find it in Benin, you find it in Brazil, in Bahia. It's the only name for the plant. You find it again in Cuba, but in Brazil, the Cordyline is called perigum roxo, red perigum. And in Trinidad, you find both the red and Cordylines and green variants as well. Here's an Orisha priest at a shrine on the same site. Next. Same sort of thing. And here is an Afro-Caribbean and Afro-Christian religion called the Spiritual Baptists. And in Trinidad and in St. Vincent, and for them, the Dracaena and Cordylines are very important ritual plants, used in spiritual baths, plants that people dream about, and so on. Next. Here, next couple of slides are altars on which the Cordylines or Dracaenas are used. Next. A maroon village in Suriname with spiritual defenses, including a Cordyline next. Go on. And so now we come to the southern United States, and the intriguing question as to whether the yuccas found on the graves of African Americans might be analogous or descended from the same idea. Well, still to do the field work on this, but archaeologists working out here in the southern states point out that yucca is important in African American graves as well as in other folk graves, but the Gullah and others consider the plant to be important in keeping the spirits in the graveyard, and we hear phrases similar to those being used in Africa. So thank you very much.